10 years ago today, one of the worst storms in New Jersey's history came crashing ashore right here in Atlantic City. It would bring destruction the likes we have not seen in decades up and down the Jersey Shore. Before that day in 2012, it was a hypothetical situation forecasters said would happen, but many residents never believed in. Just 6 days before landfall, Hurricane Sandy started life as a tropical storm deep in the heart of the Caribbean Sea. It crossed over Cuba, briefly strengthening into a Category 3 storm, but managed to stay away from the East Coast. In fact, many forecast models suggested Sandy would go harmlessly out to sea. The Euro, notably, was the outlier, predicting the final landfall within just 30 miles of where it would eventually end up. A little over 48 hours out from landfall, it was evident that the upper air pattern would guide Sandy towards New Jersey and the worst case scenario would be realized. The scenes of chaos and destruction will forever be etched in the minds of every Sandy survivor. We saw the pictures, we saw the videos, but many are completely unaware of what actually happened in the trenches as Sandy barreled ashore. I had an opportunity to catch up with Atlantic City Fire Chief Scott Evans to recount his memories from that day.
So about a week before Sandy hit Atlantic City, we started hearing stories about a potential hurricane coming out of the Caribbean, that it was going to come up the East Coast and it would actually make a left hook into New Jersey. And our first thought was, there's no way this is going to happen. But we did prepare for it. We started, I think it was a good 8 days before it actually hit us that we started preparing for it. And as we watched the potential projected track, we were still saying, this is not really going to happen. The day before Sandy got here, I was standing on New Hampshire Avenue with 4 to 6 inches of water just cascading over New Hampshire Avenue into the inlet, into the First Ward section, just filling up around Uptown School, Vermont Plaza, and Inlet Towers. So one of the things I remember was one of our guys saying, man overboard, man overboard. So I quickly turned around, had the driver stop the vehicle and say, well, what's going on? What happened? One of our rescuers had 2 kids standing in about 18 to 20 inches of water, sitting there crying with their mother. So he ran down the street, picked them up, and put them back in the truck. Then I remember turning around saying, who has the bag of rope? Because we were expecting a surge, and I was anticipating if this vehicle starts floating, it's going to be real serious because we were so close to the bay. I'm like, if we start to float, just tie around a pole and try to secure this vehicle there. So people were like, I evacuated twice before, nothing happened. But we tell them, that's not the case. It's still going to create a lot of damage, and you need to heed the warnings of the emergency personnel. The evacuation started in Atlantic City voluntarily 72 hours before. Atlantic City being the urban environment that it is, the people who live in Atlantic City, their homes, everything they have is in their homes, is in their little abodes, if you will, and they're reluctant to leave there and thinking that it's going to be unsafe or they could be, pillaged or robbed if they should leave their houses. So they're really reluctant to leave. So we try to educate people and tell them how important it is to evacuate, and we do have shelters that we stand up and try to provide an area of safe refuge for them. We need to inform the public. We really do need to get the word out, and we need to use now, 10 years later, we have a greater ability to do that through social media, through the many different, the use of our sirens that we have in Atlantic City now, our warning systems, the reverse 911 ability that we have through telephones. Our notification systems have gotten 10 times better. So that's one of the good advancements that we've seen. And we'll just get the information out to the public, get them educated, and let them know that, you need to seek safe refuge.
Are you concerned about the next one?
Absolutely. Greatly concerned. Just the recent northeasterns that we've had, storms that we've seen moderate flooding. Today we're seeing minor flooding. We are seeing water in the streets, not severe, but we're seeing. So, we're really concerned that, when we see the next, which every 10 years, we're going to get hit with something pretty serious. So we are concerned about that, and we're doing everything we can to improve the bulkheads, to improve the infrastructure, to put our buffers, to improve our dunes, to get our beaches up to where they can protect the economy here and people's homes.
We want to thank our first responders, as they are the backbone of our communities and really did everything they could to help people in need. If there was one positive that did ultimately come out of Sandy, it was the fact that people dropped what they were doing, came from all over the place to help their friends and neighbors, and in many cases, even strangers. I want to introduce you to Cricket Denton, who is a local Reverend who was involved in the recovery efforts back then 10 years ago.
when we try to understand natural disasters, especially from a religious or spiritual aspect, we wonder, why is God doing this? Why does God do this? But I try and look at natural disasters and say, this isn't an act of God, but what is a response to God is the volunteers that come in afterwards. We had a volunteer team that drove from California, cross country. They drove through Christmas Eve, through Christmas Day, to get to our church in New Jersey the day after Christmas. They worked through New Year's Eve, they worked New Year's Day. This was people giving up their holidays, one of the most important holidays in the Christian calendar, and they were giving that up to help strangers, to help people that they didn't even know. And that's where I saw the light. That's where I saw God in the midst of this, not in the destruction and the disaster, but in the love and care that came afterwards. We got a call from our conference office. We were kind of scrambling after the hurricane. We'd never really done this kind of thing in New Jersey before, this disaster response. And we sort of were talking about it, and we get a call from our conference office that said, you know, we have teams that are interested in coming in. And I wasn't even a pastor at the time, I was a secretary. So I get the phone call, and they said, we have teams that are interested in coming in. Would you want to host them at your church? Me, having no authority whatsoever, goes, yeah, sure. I didn't ask our trustees, didn't ask our lead pastor, didn't ask anyone. Kind of went out on a limb, took a leap of faith, and that's what happened. And I sort of asked for forgiveness afterwards. But for 2 solid years, that's what we did, and our church just rallied behind it. So it was sort of spontaneous. In the moment, I thought, yes, we absolutely have to do this. You know, taking stuff out, we call it mucking and gutting, where they're just taking everything out of the house, stripping the house down. But it also gets into some rebuilding too. We worked on the bay, on the western part of southern New Jersey, and they did a lot of stairs. So I know there's some pictures of people who build stairs, but they're doing drywall, they're just rebuilding in a lot of situations. We had some youth teams that were doing like painting. Youth teams can't do a whole lot of building, so they did a lot of painting, they put up fences. Really, we partnered the teams with the work that could be done that they were capable of doing. I think the most challenging aspect is that we're still dealing with it. So there are people, so I'm doing Ida recovery now, which hit North Jersey. There are still people that didn't fully recover from Sandy, and we're 10 years later, and now they got hit by Ida. It's a very frustrating process. It's very long, it's drawn out, and we're still dealing with it, and I think that's the hardest part. I think the most important message to get out is that there is help. You know, there are different organizations, not just the Methodist Church, there are different nonprofit organizations that are in New Jersey that are helping. We are working with the federal government, so it takes a really long time, but there is help out there. So just don't give up faith. You know, have faith, keep trying, keep making phone calls, keep bugging whoever you need to bug, because there is help.
Seeing images like that is truly heartening and just shows you what volunteerism means to our communities in times of need. A lot of people ask me a very popular question: could another Sandy happen? And my answer, while unsettling, is deeply rooted in the facts. Statistically speaking, yes, absolutely, it's inevitable. But it's important that we stay weather aware and always have a plan in place for the next big storm. All we can do right now is hope that it never does actually happen in our lifetimes.